And I would imagine this case or this trial is a pretty big deal because it's very specific type. It's a very specific brand compared to the others, where I feel like a lot of these propylene hernia meshes kind of get thrown into the same basket because there's a lot of similar issues, similar ways of producing it. But this one with the pigskin is obviously more unique. Would this be considered a bellwether trial?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Because it's still a consolidated litigation. It's just a consolidated litigation in state court, but they still have the bellwether process where you have like kind of the test case. And so this first one is happening this coming week. And again, it's going to take a few weeks, but it'll be really interesting to see how the jury reacts to this. I mean, polypropylene is kind of one of those trigger words where, I mean, you don't even want it in your pipes in your house, for God's sakes. You certainly don't want it.
It just sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, don't put this. I mean, there's there been so many indications historically that this is not a good thing to put in the human body.
Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome back. Another week, another episode. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How was your weekend?
Well, we're just getting into the weekend since we are recording a little bit late due to inclement weather, I will say, getting from Phoenix to Tucson. So it's Saturday, but so far so good. We are going to be attending the Heart Ball tonight, and we are just back from our Prescott trip this past weekend. Very exciting. Yeah, very exciting. Good dog trip, good hiking trip, nice weather.
Yeah, the dogs seem to have really enjoyed the atmosphere out there.
Yeah, they love the wild outdoors where nobody's around and they can roam free.
They can let the chaos out.
Exactly.
That's good. Yeah, we did have a little bit of a climate issue, I guess, best way to put it, on Wednesday, because I usually drive down from Phoenix to Tucson to record, and I got on the highway about the normal time, like 3 o'clock-ish or something like that, and traffic was insane. It took like an hour to get out of Phoenix, and as soon as I get out of Phoenix, it's bumper again, and there's a wall of dust and rain, and I knew it was going to be just chaos trying to make it across. And we were already coming down this weekend. It made sense to just kind of push it off. So
yeah,
a little unlucky for Fernie on the editing time, but
it'll be a little bit of a close call there. But I'm confident he will have this out on time Wednesday morning or midnight, I think it is. I'm not sure. It's very, very early Wednesday morning.
We saw Dune 2 last night at Roadhouse Theater. Absolutely fantastic movie. Really enjoyed it. I didn't really care too much about Dune 1 when it first came out. I thought it was an okay movie. This is pretty good. I didn't know anything about the books. But then as I started to learn more, I'm very interested in like lore, like the background behind movies and TV shows like House of Dragons or Game of Thrones, because there's, thousands of pages of background story, but you only get very, the kind of surface level of it in the movies and shows. So
I don't know, like the back. I mean, I read the original Dune book, which is, I don't know, I think it came out in the 70s. It could have even been the 60s. It's an older book. I mean, that was actually, and I'm not a science fiction fan, but actually I remember back in the day, my mother said, I know you're not a science fiction fan, but this is a really good book. And I really did love it.
Yeah, it was like pretty revolutionary for its time, wasn't it? I mean, that's like the first big sci-fi book that really came out, did really well, and now is a classic, it seems.
Oh, absolutely. So, so what's the lore though behind it, other than the book?
Well, I think if you haven't read the book, the lore is the book. It is what it is. But if you haven't read the book, going into the first movie, it's pretty confusing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of families, there's a lot of dynamics, there's a lot of just kind of like background, overall information that you don't have, and they do a good job of kind of trying to establish that, a lot of those relationships and friendships and storylines in like quick little excerpts or like quick little sentences. Be like, oh, we've been doing this for years, why aren't you ready today? And it's like, oh, okay, so they've been friends for years and they've been doing this for years. But I don't know, it added a lot more to the second, learning more about kind of how the whole universe works, I guess. So
even though you didn't love the first one, you were open-minded for the second and sat through 3 hours of it and loved it.
Yeah, and Roadhouse is fantastic. I mean, if you're going to go to a 3-hour movie, I think you got to go to a place like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the last time I went was when The Color Purple had just come out relatively recently, and it was something that I knew that Peter wasn't going to want to go see. And so it was like during the middle of the day one day, I just decided to go and see it. I think more for the popcorn than the movie, honestly. But
That sounds fantastic. Middle of the day solo movie, honestly. That's...
yeah, there's like nobody there. But what I hadn't realized is it started, and I was like, wait a minute, this is a freaking musical? I mean, because I saw the original Color Purple. I was in law school when it came out, and I remember taking a break from studying from exams to go see that movie, and it was like such an intense, incredible movie. And so I was thinking, oh, this is going to be, this similar, only newer.
Yeah.
But it was completely different. I'm not a big fan.
Well, Roadhouse, I think, is a fantastic place. There's a stigma around going to movies by yourself or going out to dinner by yourself. I love doing it.
Oh, I don't have dinner is different than movies, but movies, I mean, who cares? It's dark. You don't talk to people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think the one time that I did go to a movie by myself and felt a little weird about it was when Endgame came out for Avengers, because I knew I needed to see it like first week or it was going to get spoiled. It was massive. Same thing with Dune 2. You just have to see these movies if you don't want it to get spoiled at any point. And I could have hit people up to go to the movie theater with, but I mean, it's just so much work trying to organize it. Sometimes it's nice just doing it impromptu. It's like, I'm available. Let's just drive down to the
at a last minute even.
Yeah, exactly. Went, saw the movie, fantastic movie. I was walking out, and the worst situation that can happen. Ben, hey, what's up? Oh, you get the shutters down your back. You're like, oh God, here we go. Turn around. Oh, hey, what's up, man? Hey, you just watch Avengers? Yeah. What do you think? Oh, it was good. Nice. And you see them kind of look around. Didn't ask. He didn't ask. Thank God. Thank goodness.
He could have been like, oh, he's in the bathroom.
Yeah. He didn't say oh, who are you with? But you could see the glance around to see that's by himself.
Well, it's just funny that there would be some issue about that. I mean, I get going out to dinner, it's very nice to have a connection over food, break bread together, the whole thing, have conversations. Yeah. But at a movie theater, there should be no conversation. You should be sitting there in your own little world, immersed in, what's going on the screen. And, just the fact that somebody's there, it's actually just annoying because you have to share your popcorn with them.
I never understood the whole stereotypical first date going to a movie dinner date.
Gotta get to know them.
Yeah. It's the worst date you could ever go on in the early days, at least. Last night I went with Christina, but we've been dating for years, so that's that's obviously different. But in the very early phases when you're trying to get to know someone, I have never understood why would you ever go to an event that is intended for zero speaking, low light, no interaction really with the people around you.
I mean, you could see if they're obnoxious in movies. You could see if they
So you're trying to find a red flag.
Well, I mean, I would say you're trying to, but it would be nice if you don't see them. And then presumably you would have a discussion about it afterwards. Maybe you should go to a really controversial movie or something, and so then go out afterwards and see what their reaction was. Or I don't know. All good.
Well, overall, good weekend. Just getting started really with this most recent one. Let's get into it.
All right.
Updates on cases.
Sure. So the first update is on the Boy Scouts case. And as you know, this case has been, it's BSA, Boy Scouts of America, filed for bankruptcy because of the just unbelievable number, 82,000, which is a pretty unbelievable number. Yeah. And again, probably the tip of the iceberg since most people don't want to come forward with these types of claims. Anyway, and they'd had these, huge verdicts against them. It was clearly going to put them into bankruptcy, so they preemptively filed. And this was something that the deadline was back in 2020. We thought, and we were telling clients that this should be, a kind of a quick and easy way to get their claims resolved. They would never have to testify at trial. And, it was bankruptcy. We basically make the claims to the bankruptcy court. They get paid. It has just been a nightmare, delay after delay after delay. And there was yet another big delay because a group of the Boy Scouts actually appealed the confirmation. So before you can pay, the plan has to get confirmed by the court. And that was a long process, again, much longer than anybody expected. Finally was confirmed. The whole system has been set up, the portal for submitting claims. And some of the early claims, there's an expedited claim you could get where you only get $3,500, but those were already starting to get paid out. Mm-hmm. And then they appealed to the Supreme Court. the confirmation, and it was on hold. And so literally everything shut down. Like,
why would they wait so long to appeal it? I mean, clearly there's a lot of time and work and effort on both sides in order to get this entire process moving in the first place.
well, so it's a small contingency that's appealing it. Most of the people, again, there's 82,000 claims. There's 144 claimants who are pushing this appeal. And the reason that they don't want it to be confirmed is that they want to have the ability to sue non-bankrupt entities that might also have some responsibility for the abuse. And this would be like, some of the churches are affiliated with the Boy Scouts.
The partnerships, that's a lot, isn't it? Because, I mean, Boy Scouts, I know, at least in Arizona, there was a while, like I remember in elementary, at least, whenever there's an elementary event or any like big city event, Boy Scouts were sponsors. Like they were partners with a majority of big businesses and people doing stuff in this area.
Right. And so, but if, for example, like a lot of them are affiliated with the churches, and like the Mormon church had a lot of lawsuits against it because the people who were involved with the Mormon church were also involved with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scout meetings were held at, various church properties and things like that. So they want to be able to sue those entities, and this whole process is allowing for third-party releases. But that being said, the vast majority have voted in favor of the plan and want it to move forward. So that that appeal is still going to, it's still pending, but the stay is off. So they are, for a while there, literally on the portal, you couldn't even get a question answered. The entire staff that's been retained to process this that's it. You can't work, shut down, no emails, no phone calls, no nothing. But that's back up and running again. I think that it's going to, continue to move forward, and ultimately we'll get a final confirmation. But the good news is, they're back to paying these initial claims, and hopefully, the bigger claims and the full matrix will get resolved. Now, there is a deadline. So the deadline for submitting these claims, and they are more complicated than the initial bankruptcy claim form, that is May 31st.
That's coming up.
Yeah, it is. And so at that point, all of however many of those 82,000 claims are actually going to be submitted, that's it. That will be the cutoff. And that's when they can then take the entire pot of money and divide it and between the value of the claims, and then determine what percentage of the value each claimant's going to get.
Yeah.
So I realize as I'm saying this, it actually sounds very, very complicated.
It does sound complicated, but I think it makes sense, especially with how the money is going to be distributed. Because we've talked about this on previous shows, how maybe they can decide on a pot or kind of like an average cost, but until you can really see exactly how many cases there are and of what where they are on the spectrum.
Exactly.
You really have no idea how much each case is worth, even at the high end or low end, because it's all very relative.
Well, and you can't pay anybody until you know the value of all of the cases, so that then you can say, okay, everybody's getting 50 cents on the dollar or 25 cents on the dollar or whatever it is. And one of the big issues too with the timing is that so many of these claimants are really elderly. There's 12,400 of the survivors who filed the initial claims are over the age of 70.
Wow.
And more than 2,200 of them are over the age of 80.
That's crazy to think, too, that these crimes are happening 60.
Oh, well, there was no oversight back then. There was no protections, and it was just a crazy situation. But these are people, this happened to them when they were preteens or teens, and they're now in their 70s and 80s. And I've already lost 2 clients during the pendency of this, have passed away. And, who knows how many will. And so really, everybody's wanting to get this pushed forward so that as many of the claimants as possible can feel, some sort of recognition and resolution during their lifetime.
What happens to their case if they pass away in this like awkward gray area phase?
Well, it depends if it would go to their estate potentially. If they have an estate set up.
Well, and the point that you mentioned about the minority group of claimants that are appealing this to the Supreme Court, that's interesting as well, because I can kind of see both sides of this, where a majority of people in this litigation it doesn't apply to. And so a lot of them are elderly, and a lot of them are, trying to get that closure, like you said, before they pass or, as soon as possible. But then this small minority who it sounds like they had been done wrong by organizations outside of Boy Scouts, but in connection with them and in conjunction, right? Like working together almost to do them wrong. I can understand their perspective where they don't want them to get off the hook for it. What would it look like if they did pursue a church, religious figure? I mean, how does that work?
Well, they can, and there have been. I mean, as you know, like huge verdicts against like the Catholic diocese for child abuse and molestation and all of that. So they could. I mean, the big issue that's going on here, and this is also pending in the whole Purdue pharmacy bankruptcy, because as part of this, these entities are contributing to the settlement. They are putting big chunks of money into the settlement, but these individual people, and of course they're going to be the ones that have these super strong cases where, they have all of the evidence, they know the name of their abuser, they can actually go in and try their case in court. They're ready to go do that and try to get these million or billion dollar verdicts. And then they want to be able to collect beyond what these entities are just contributing to the settlement. Yeah. So they're saying, I don't want to be bound by this settlement for entities that aren't bankrupt. And I get it. And it's something that is actually pending before the Supreme Court now on this Purdue bankruptcy, whether that can happen or not. So this whole thing could still fall apart, depending on the outcome of that. But at this point, it is going to continue to move forward. But yeah, I mean, you're right. From both perspectives. I mean, this is kind of one of those, the greater good for the masses, but some individuals are going to have to have their claims compromised for the good. Yeah. So
that sucks with this type of case too, where it's like, it's greater good, bite the bullet. But in these types of cases, it's even harder to really even make that argument. So they have continued. It started back up. The portal's back up and running. But the decision on the appeal to the Supreme Court hasn't been decided yet, so things can still fall apart. Is there this kind of, I would imagine this feeling of uncertainty and of like, how much is my time really worth putting towards this if, a few months from now, there's a decision from a Supreme Court that erases everything we've been doing?
Well, it doesn't erase everything, but it would take out a big chunk. It would take out all of the settlement money from these other entities that aren't bankrupt. Yeah. And so for example, we were just on a call the other night where they were talking about the status and what's happening, and there's a part of there's some funds in this pot already, but then these other funds are in escrow. Yeah. So what could happen is, we figure out what the value of the claim is, and people get like, $85, and then depending on what happens, they could get, thousands and thousands more. Crazy. It just depends. And so what will happen for sure in this process is that there will be multiple payments. It's not all going to happen in at one time.
Well, the difference is you're trying to collect from a bankrupt company, which because it's bankrupt, they don't have much money. They're selling everything.
It's basically all in. Yeah. For BSA.
And they're liquidating it. It's a difference between only getting their money and then the money of hundreds of thousands, millions and millions of dollars from these organizations that have plenty of money and are just contributing it to the pot.
Well, right. And so it may be that the BSA claims are going to be limited to the pot of money that comes from BSA and other bankrupt organizations, but then the people would have to actually file the lawsuits directly against these other organizations.
Which is really difficult as well.
It is difficult. I mean, some of the cases are going to be successful and they're in a position to do it. Most of them are not. Yeah. Most of them, and again, you're talking about, like I said, some of these 70, 80-year-old men. And I mean, some of them, first of all, I just got photos from one of my clients the other day. I mean, he found a box that had literally all of his his cards, his badges, his what do you call the little thing they wear across the sash things, all of this, and photos. But some of them they threw away the stuff. First of all, it was bad memories. Of course, they don't have it, and then how do they even prove they were in the Boy Scouts? And we've been searching through these databases, and a lot of them we do find on the rosters, but then there's some rosters that they haven't released or haven't tracked down. And so there are some clients who, I believe me, if you talk to them, you believe them that this happened to them. And they know the name of the troop and all of that, but they don't have hard evidence. Yeah. So it's pretty messy.
Yeah. That sounds messy. Well, I don't even know which way to really lean on this one because I think it makes complete sense for them to want to pursue these other entities that do have the funds that, should be held responsible more than what they're just willing to kind of chalk up and contribute. But at the same time, like you said, greater good. I mean, it really does put all of these other claimants in a tricky situation if the Supreme Court agrees with the appeal.
Well, and it kind of goes back just to all of the global settlements. So in any global settlement, so for example, Monsanto or any of these companies, I mean, they're going to, who are not bankrupt, they're agreeing to put whatever pile of money into this fund, and most people want to go with that.
Yeah.
Some people don't. At least in that situation, they have the ability to opt out.
Yeah.
But again, if too many people opt out, then the settlement's pulled
Then there's
too.
no point,
So it's I mean, it's something kind of like this does happen in a bigger, in the bigger kind of fishbowl as well. But anyway, for now, it is moving forward. The claims are at least being assessed, evaluated, and they'll be in a position to start getting paid after the 31st. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, sounds like quite the balancing act.
Yeah.
Speaking of Monsanto, any updates there?
Yeah, actually, this was kind of an interesting one, too. So one of the recent verdicts against Monsanto was a $175 million verdict.
Wow.
And the defense appealed. Well, actually, before they appealed it, they filed a post-trial motion, so a motion for a new trial. And they basically said to the judge, we don't even want to wait for appeal. We want you to say that, toss this and start all over, because the jury was obviously so confused. They couldn't have possibly come to a verdict like this unless they were confused. And the judge was really pissed off. And I'll kind of read the quotes of their argument, which really pissed the judge off. But they were so pissed off. They was like, basically, this was just a delay tactic. And so they added a $2.3 million delay damages onto the verdict as a result of that, which is a form of prejudgment interest. Because, so for example, if they had paid the money, it would have earned interest. So, and this is even pre-appeal.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's really crazy. Yeah. And so what they said in their motion is that they said the only reason a jury could reach a liability verdict and excess of damages in a trial for a product that regulators worldwide consistently find safe and not carcinogenic is because the numerous and repeated errors by the court and conduct of plaintiff's counsel created confusion and prejudice among jurors.
Errors by the court. So they're kind of talking shit to the judge.
Attack the judge. Yeah. I know. And so the court says, only if the court were to agree with Monsanto's indignant, self-promotional, post-trial exculpatory diagnosis and determine that the jury should have agreed with Monsanto's assessment, was misled by its rulings, and not listening to the testimony of the witnesses, could the court agree with Monsanto's assessment. So the judge was pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, basically they file a motion asking the judge, throw this out because you screwed up.
Yeah.
And you're a piece of shit judge. And so we should get another go at it. What judge is going to be like, yeah, you're right?
It's insane. And I'm glad that they not only got verbally smacked down, but also with a fine.
Well, they did. So normally what happens is the judge just says denied.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, you guys are idiots. Get out of here.
I know, but this one was kind of pissed off. They took it a little personally.
Yeah.
Took it a little personally and said, yeah, denied, and we're going to slam you with an extra $2.3 million. But I mean, what's that on top of the 175?
I was going to say, I wonder if the CEO is like, guys, come on, what the fuck we already got 175. You're going to add 2.3 onto it. But at the same time, it's like, what's $2.3 million to them? It's really not that much.
Well, yeah. So I liked it. It was a sign. And of course, they're saying they're still going to appeal it. Yeah. But, with appeals, too, if the appeal is successful, you do get post-judgment interest. So from the time, basically, so that $175 million, you would get interest on that for the amount of time it took before you actually got paid.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's always something. But again, and the appeal could be reversed. You could have to go back and try it again. No. It could be settled, pending the appeal for some compromise number. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But
sounds like they're kind of coming for the jury there too, where they're like, these guys have no idea what the fuck is going on. They're idiots.
They didn't get it.
Yeah, they're dumb. Okay, let's have some smart people come in here, and we promise, they'll understand what we're doing.
Well, and the crazy thing about it too, and basically what the judge said, is that they're saying you're stupid because you believed the plaintiff's experts, you didn't believe ours. I mean, there are two sides, and believe me, both sides have great experts, and they're up there testifying, and that's what the jury does. They have to decide who to believe. Yeah. Well, they believe one or the other, but because they didn't believe yours, they're confused. They're obviously confused.
They're obviously fucking idiots.
Well, if it was so obvious, there wouldn't be a trial in the first place.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that one kind of made me happy this week.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see that very often. We don't see
know,
it where
this is a
like
new one.
they actually
Delay damages.
Yeah, delay damages because I mean it's what is it, Texas two-step? I mean, shit, their delay damages would be pretty damn
my
high,
gosh.
out of control.
I know,
And
right? Just years and years and years of those cases sitting. And another one of those litigations where people, have ovarian cancer and mesothelioma. And I mean, so many of those people have died during this delay.
Yeah, and interest payment's not going to make up for that.
Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, hopefully we hear more about Monsanto and
We always hear more about
we
Monsanto
always hear
there.
about Monsanto.
Which is owned by Bayer. People always want to try and correct us and say that's Bayer. Yes, they're owned by Bayer, but it was Monsanto at the time of the production initially, and the name is still going to be in these lawsuits. So
That makes sense.
yeah.
What else do you got for us?
So on one of as we've talked about lots of hernia mesh in the past, and there are a bunch of different brands and products out there. And we did speak briefly about one called the STRATTICE mesh, and this one is a little bit different. It's a biologic, so it's not the polypropylene. This one's actually made out of pigskin, and it was one of the things where they realized there was a lot of issue with polypropylenes. Brought this product, but unfortunately, it has a lot of the same issues and the human body is still rejecting it. And so these cases are consolidated in New Jersey. There's a state court consolidation and also a federal court consolidation. And the first trial is coming up actually March 4th. We're today recording on the 1st. So it's coming up really soon. It's going to be about a 3-week trial, but that will set the stage for for how this litigation moves forward. So that's kind of exciting. Certainly we will, let you guys know. But, just to kind of reiterate, most people don't even know exactly what
I was going to
kind
say,
of mesh
what
they
kind
have.
of damages does this one have specific to the other? Because you said there's a little bit of overlap, but I always imagine the propylene one with the plastics and all that. I mean, how can that even compare to something more natural like?
Well, yeah. I mean, the way that it happens is somewhat different, but what is actually happening is still the same, and that's that the mesh is coming apart and breaking down into the body, and that the body's reacting to it. And so, even with biologic tissues, sometimes bodies, just don't. And
well, you get like a liver transplant, you can get what's it called? Your body can just
rejection.
Yeah.
That rejection. Yeah. So. And again, even if it's a biologic, it's going to be treated with all kinds of chemicals. And so I couldn't give you the specific details, but while it may be a lower foreign body response, it's still having a response. It's still breaking down. It's still causing infections, scar tissue. So basically, all of the types of injuries that we see in the polypropylene meshes as well. And again, I mean, ideally, if I needed to have a hernia surgery, I would prefer to have them use my own tissue. I mean, and again, it's
I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, that's how it always happened. It's just that was historically, they would have to go and basically sew your own tissue together over the hernia. But then this was like,
Easy.
Well, it was easier and faster for the surgeons, and then it was also a money making opportunity because if you don't put a product in, you can't sell a product.
Fair.
So there you go again. But again, most people don't know which kind of mesh they have. But if anybody is having problems with the mesh, there's a good chance there's a lawsuit about it out there because most of these are problematic. It's just an issue of which ones are maybe worse than others or have a higher rate of failure. But all of them, can be problematic and have failures.
And I would imagine this case or this trial is a pretty big deal because it's very specific type. It's a very specific brand compared to the others, where I feel like a lot of these propylene hernia meshes kind of get thrown into the same basket because there's a lot of similar issues, similar ways of producing it. But this one with the pigskin is obviously more unique. Would this be considered a bellwether trial?
Yes, it is because it's still a consolidated litigation. It's just a consolidated litigation in state court, but they still have the bellwether process where you have like kind of the test case. And so this first one is happening this coming week. And again, it's going to take it's going to take a few weeks, but it'll be really interesting to see how the jury reacts to this. I mean, polypropylene is kind of one of those trigger words where, I mean, you don't even want it in your pipes in your house, for God's sakes. You certainly don't want it.
It just sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, don't put this. I mean, there have been so many indications historically that this is not a good thing to put in the human body, whereas there's less of that type of evidence about the biologics.
Yeah.
So we'll see, how this pans out, and how these are going to move forward.
Well, so it's a 3-week trial, so I'm assuming there's going to be a ton of information coming out. They've been working on this, I would assume, for over a year,
many years.
Preparing for this trial. Really big deal for the law firm and the lawyers. Where can people keep up with what's going on and the evidence introduced and just what happens in the courtroom? Is there anything like OJ type level where you can watch some of this?
No, there's not. I mean, this isn't like a huge case that that the news stations would be wanting to be broadcasting. I mean, you could log on. There's the filings with the court, but it's really boring just to look at whatever the filings of the day. It's however the motions went. So really, the best way is to tune in with us.
There you go.
Or you can also Google STRATTICE litigation update. A lot of the law firms who are involved in that will post updates.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
But you'll see, I mean, they're not not very, very often. I mean, if a big thing like when the verdict comes out, you'll probably hear, you'll see a few people posting about that. But in the interim, just what's happening. Sometimes on these litigations, when you're involved in it, there will be, the leadership will send out daily reports. In some of these cases, we get daily emails about this person testified, and here's how it went. These are the questions the jury had. This is who's going to testify tomorrow. So if you're hooked into it, you can get some of those daily updates. But
so the questions that the jury has, is there a Q&A section for a jury? I mean, how do they ask questions, or who do they ask questions to?
So that's actually interesting, because in the past, juries could not ask questions.
That was my understanding.
Right, and then they change. And again, this is going to be state by state, but most states now do allow for that. And the way that it works here in Arizona is that if a jury has a question, they have to write it down and they have to give it to the bailiff. The bailiff gives it to the judge. The judge then addresses the questions with the attorneys, and they all decide whether or not it's a question that should be answered and how the judge will answer that question. And there are times where the judge just says, no, that's not a question that's going to get answered.
Yeah.
Or if they agree, then they provide an answer. But honestly, the best part of the jury questions is not the answer you give back. It's knowing what the hell they're thinking, and then figuring out how you can answer it in your case to your advantage, because you're like, holy shit, they don't understand X. And then I'm going to make sure that in my argument, or that the next witness, I'm going to really address X from my perspective, so that they understand that.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that perspective of it, because I imagined if a jury asks a question, in my head, it was like, okay, well, maybe they let the plaintiffs answer it and then they let the defense answer it. But then the answers can be so drastically different. How beneficial, that might be even more confusing, because it's like, okay, what the hell is going on? Having the judge answer it and answer it and try to kind of come to this gray, even medium area between the plaintiff and defense, that makes sense. But on the lawyer side of it, where it's like, because you don't get to talk to a jury, you don't really, all you get is facial expressions here and there, right? Like that's kind of the best way you can read
eye rolls,
yeah,
glares, at the other attorney, of course.
But if they're asking questions, that gives you so much material and so much more direction on what to focus on, how to focus on it, and maybe even like this type of question isn't even super important, but they don't realize how important it is to like this other area or this other aspect of the case or something. So you can just take it in so many different directions.
Yeah. I mean, it just gives you so much information, and it makes you really tailor it, because I do think that it's just a big problem with attorneys of forgetting how to think like a regular person.
Yeah.
And some of the things just seem so obvious that you don't even address it. And then the jurors are like, wait, what about this? You know, what about?
Well, and both sides will, I'm sure think of it the same way, right? Like both sides. And is that ever, would you imagine, or if you're in that situation, is that intimidating to where both you and the defense are kind of like scrambling at the desk, figuring out, okay, this is like a ton of information that we just got, a ton of insight from the jury. We need to quickly think on our feet, work on our feet to incorporate it into our next witness or our upcoming.
That's actually what you're always doing in trial. You're always thinking on your feet because somebody can come out, you have a witness come out with something that you didn't see coming out of left field. You're kind of like, whoa, holy shit. Both people are trying to deal with it. But the reality is that, again, these trials are 3 or 4 weeks long, and it may not be something that you're going to get answered, air quotes, in the next 20 minutes or with the next witness, but it's something that is an issue for the jury, and
next week when this
this is going to come up here, and I'm going to make sure that when I do my closing argument, I'm going to really hit on that and explain it. So it's great information to have, and it might change your the whole tactic and the whole direction that you the way you were going to argue something.
God, I can't imagine how stressful and exhausting a 3-week trial would be. I mean, first of all, the amount of work that goes into preparing for a case, because compared to suits, I mean, we get we get kind of the best.
They don't look very exhausted.
No,
do they?
they don't. They look excited
really fun,
and easy and going straight to it. But I mean, there's years of work that go into preparation for this. The amount of directs and crosses and then redirects and recrosses. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is. And for these big trials, though, I mean, you have a huge trial team. It's not, like the car accident case here in Pima County where I'm like the only attorney there and I don't have people, taking notes behind me. And then, that evening you're all sitting around and you're going over things and getting other ideas. And you have other people even just watching the jury because you can't watch everybody at the same time while you're questioning a witness. So, I mean, you have a whole team of people and it's a debriefing session every single night. And
it sounds kind of fun, though.
It is. It's really fun. It's much more fun than when it's just you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's all going on. But yes, I mean, it is exhausting. And then luckily on those trial teams, oftentimes, and I've had cases where I've tried it with another attorney where it's like, oh, I only have to do half of the witnesses. You know, I mean, it just makes it a little bit less. And you're sitting there also, again, watching what the other attorney can't be watching while they're doing their thing. So.
Well, definitely keep us updated on this mesh trial. I think it would be cool. I mean, if we have a little section for the next 3 weeks going into kind of what happened over the last week during the trial, because I'm assuming a bunch of stuff will come out and a lot of grimy details, if I had to guess, about the product itself and some of the backroom dealings that they've been doing.
There's always that kind of stuff.
Always. Yeah. What other updates you have?
Okay, well, so we'll hit on a hot topic that everybody always loves, and that's the kratom.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, every time we talk about kratom, people just lose their shit. And I will just say, again, we're not here to say whether you should or you shouldn't take kratom. All we're here to do is to talk about lawsuits that are involving kratom and the information that's out there about it. Again, we understand that some people think that it has saved their lives and they love it. And if they're an adult, do it. Go for it. But the more information you have, the better. And that's what we're here for, is to provide the information. So there is another lawsuit, and we've talked about multiple death lawsuits over kratom use. And this one, though, is a different lawsuit. It's 2 buyers who are alive, but they are saying that they became addicted to kratom and that they're suing Ashland Marketing Group, who is marketing these kratom products that they used. And they're saying that they knew that they had addictive qualities and that was not disclosed. And now they're addicted. And so they filed a lawsuit over that. And I think what ultimately may happen is that they may add a warning, but again, since it's not regulated, they don't have to. It's not like cigarettes and, or alcohol now that have required warnings. So a smart thing for a company that's marketing this would say something like, this product may be addictive, blah, 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 and, some legalese. But so it's another lawsuit. And I think that, attention is really kind of coming to this more recently. I mean, I hadn't heard about it until these lawsuits, to be honest with you.
Well, I always think, this lawsuit aside too, is like the argument or suing people because something's addictive, I think is pretty crazy to me. Like, I think that there are unique situations, like, for example, with the opioid, a problem and addiction where they were just clearly, blatantly, like, lying about it. And,
saying it's not addictive.
Yeah, saying it's not
which
addictive.
They pretty much did.
But at the same time, I think, like, anything that makes you feel good or any type of, like, mood altering or psychological altering substance and activity, anything it is, it's addictive, whether or not you want it to be. Like, I don't think anything you can make is just not addictive, like Nicorette gum or something where it's like, oh, it's less addictive than cigarettes. It's still addictive. Nicotine's addictive. Anything with like these type of substances.
Well, I think that you can say that, but again, what their position is that they're marketing it as this very all natural, mild, healthy, and maybe not saying specifically that it's not addictive, but it's not the kind of thing that you think you're going to be in a situation where you're in the throes of withdrawal.
Yeah.
And that's what these people are saying, is that they are in withdrawal like they go through with opioids. And that, and again, they are similar. They are subtler. Well, actually, the way that they describe it is, the high created is subtler than hard drugs like cocaine or heroin, but the effects are similar to opioids, and it affects the same opioid receptors. So if you use it enough, it's going to potentially get addictive like opioids. And if you've known anybody who's gone through a withdrawal from that, I mean, it's really devastating and can require treatment and. I think, it's the same thing. Like with alcohol, there are people who literally have to be medicated when they withdraw from it.
Yeah.
But then there are other people who just, they're like stressed out and they're uncomfortable and they crave it. But, basically it's just going through that discomfort for a period of time. But I think that the issue here is that they are marketing this such a healthy, all-natural thing. You wouldn't think it would go to that level.
That makes sense. I guess I would just imagine, like, once you try it and you're like, wow, I feel really good off this. Wow, I want to take it. It's like, okay, well, this is kind of the starting signs. But regardless, that's kind of irrelevant to the overall lawsuit, which is the way that they're marketing it.
Well, but I think, that certainly is going to be could potentially be a defense.
Yeah.
And just on the Narcan, on the Kratom, while we're talking about it, I was talking to Peter about this, and he was like, "Does Narcan work for it?" And I had no idea, so I actually researched it, and it says that yes, it can. Again, makes
it goes
sense
off the
receptors.
the
opioid receptors. And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting thing too, because now they're making Narcan available like for just regular people. It doesn't have to be, through a paramedic or something.
Also,
like that.
It's not good marketing to be like, it looks really bad if Narcan's out here like, don't worry, we got you covered for Kratom as well, because a lot of people are out here like, what the fuck? I didn't even know there was any risk to it.
But so, for example, somebody like these people who find themselves addicted, perhaps they would say, oh, gee, maybe it would be a good thing. Or a lot of these cases are brought by the parents of people who've passed away. And, you hear these stories, they come in and they're non-responsive. I guess if you were doing Kratom, I'd want to have some Narcan in it.
That's fair. I already know we're going to get quite a few comments and studies linked that it's non-addictive. There's no addictive qualities to it from some...
It's the best thing since sliced bread, blah, blah, blah. And we're evil and we're the devil for talking out against it.
Our clips do well on it, though. So honestly, I'm pretty appreciative.
Keep that in mind, Fernando.
I'm pretty appreciative of it overall. Well, that's interesting that they're going over the marketers too, because it sounds like they're keeping the producers out of it. And is that of note here in this situation?
Well, actually, I think that they probably did include them, but the primary the issue with the producers is that they're often like these little fly-by-night companies, and they're hard to collect from. But if you have like a big marketing agency that is marketing sense. For them, they're probably easier to collect for, have insurance, that sort of thing. So that's just my guess. It doesn't specifically say why. And again, they're the ones that are out there promoting it to people and yet not including a warning.
Yeah, and I wonder what that would look like too if this lawsuit is successful, because I'm sure it would discourage any other organizations or businesses with working with Kratom at all in any capacity, because clearly a connection to them or facilitating and endorsing that is dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, from that perspective, too, it'll be an interesting thing to keep tabs on.
Well, appreciate the Kratom update. I'd love as many Kratom updates as possible because our clips do fantastic on them.
No, people just love or hate it.
Yeah. We are at kind of like the last quarter of the show. I don't know if there's any specific areas or cases you wanted to dedicate some time to.
Yeah. So actually, just a quick on recalls. And of course, it's near and dear to my heart because I have super dry eyes and I'm constantly using eye drops. But there are some additional eye drops and ointments that have been recalled. And these are recalled as a result of unsterile conditions found at the plant in India where they were being produced. But these are things that are being sold by CVS, Walmart. The brands are Equate and CVS Health Lubricant, and then Lubricant PM Ointment by AACE Pharmaceuticals. And, the problem with these eye drops is that when something goes in through your eyes, it kind of bypasses, some of your natural defenses. And so you can get these really horrible infections, and people have lost their eyesight, have actually died from septic infections. So it's actually a serious thing. If you are somebody who uses eye drops regularly, pop onto the FDA website if you want more details on the specific brands. But yeah, Equate, CVS, and then this AACE Pharmaceuticals are the most current ones.
Yeah, it's pretty bad too that CVS, their off-brand ones are contaminated, because I feel like most people that go to the store, if you're not going to get a name brand, you're just going to get like CVS, Walgreens, Walmart.
Yeah,
those are like
you
the
think it's
ones.
going to be just as good and cheaper, and
exactly. And so I would imagine the sales on those are pretty high. Also, I think it was the Equinox or the Equate. Yeah, that sounds really familiar to me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I know. I have a bunch of Equate stuff. I'm pretty sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said these are being produced in India.
Yeah. The facilities where they bottle them are all being produced.
And I wonder too what type of oversight there is for these types of products, because obviously in all of our stores, all of our products are shipped from all across the world. Like that's just the way that the world works. But like you said, with eye drops specifically, because the way that you're administering them to yourself, they're going through several layers of your defensive capabilities. And they're kind of just higher risk of any type of contamination. You eat some meat that's gone bad a little bit, you'll feel sick, you'll feel like shit. But you put some contaminated eye drops in, and like you said, you can die.
Your brain's right there.
Right there.
It's bad stuff. So and I take it seriously because I use eye drops all the time.
Well, I don't use eye drops, and I will continue not to avoid any risk.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get we talk about cases that we're handling, and we will talk about some of them, but I was going to get into kind of a little bit of an in-depth discussion about workers' comp. And one of the questions that we had was about why they couldn't sue their employer. And it's a bit of an in-depth discussion. So I think maybe we'll hold off and we'll talk about that next week. Okay. Since we're kind of coming close on time, and just talk about some other interesting cases in the news, but also of types of cases that we do handle.
Yeah, let's get into it.
And so one of them that really jumped out at me this week was we've been talked a lot about dram shop cases and where people are overserved alcohol. Oftentimes then there's DUIs, that sort of thing. And those are some pretty horrendous cases. This one, though, was kind of unique because it involves a lawsuit against Delta Airlines for overserving alcohol on an airplane.
That's like the best part, though, is that you just get belligerent and while you're flying.
And it's really interesting. I wonder why you don't see more lawsuits about this, because I cannot even tell you how many times I've been on planes and seen people, just wasted. And it seems to me like the what do you call them? Flight attendants. I almost said stewardesses. I know that's horrendously sexist and whatever. I'm going to get canceled. Sorry. But anyway, flight attendants. I mean, basically, it's just they will give you as many as you want, as fast as you want. I mean, in theory, I think they want you to just go to sleep and leave them alone. Yeah. But I mean, I've seen people get belligerent. My flight to North Carolina a couple of years ago to see my sister. I mean, they actually had the sheriff or marshals come on when we landed to remove a guy because he was drunk and screaming and yelling at the steward, at the flight attendant. Yeah, I mean, so anyway, there is a lawsuit, but there is a claim if you're overserved by an airline, and this particular lawsuit involves Delta Airlines, who overserved a guy on the plane, and it sounds like when he got on the plane, he had probably already had a couple of drinks. Probably shouldn't have served him any, but they did continue to serve him during the flight. And then what happened afterwards is like unbelievable. So they go to short-term parking to get their car, and he's getting into this fight with his wife. So he's yelling and screaming at her in the garage to the point that witnesses are saying it's making them very uncomfortable. Jesus. Oh, and they have a child with them too, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so they have a child in a car seat. So at this, and of course there's security footage to show all of this. I mean, this guy's not getting away with this crap, right? So they go to the car, puts the child in the right rear passenger seat of the vehicle. He gets in into the car and is getting ready to leave. And, we don't know what exactly is being said, but the wife gets out of the car. So we already know he's yelling at her outside of the car, gets out of the car, and then goes to open the vehicle, the door to get the child out, probably thinking he's wasted. I'm not going to ride with him. It's not safe for me and the child. So he puts the vehicle into reverse, accelerates abruptly. She falls over. He ends up continuing to drive in reverse, runs over her, drags her, and then runs over her. But there's like this imprint on her body. Then it gets even crazier. He gets out of the car and he starts yelling, "Are you fucking crazy? Get the fuck up right now. Get off the ground and get in the car."
Jesus Christ.
So then these witnesses are watching, and he throws her into the car, screaming, "Now I have to take you to the emergency room." But then as they get to the toll booth, he does ask for help, and the paramedics arrive. They take her to the hospital, and she ultimately does die.
Oh, she died from that.
Well, he ran over her, dragged her and ran over her.
Yeah, I mean, fuck.
I mean, what a nutbag, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and of course it's all caught. There's witnesses. But, it's in a airport garage. Yeah. There's witnesses who are hearing this, who are testifying about this. There's security cameras showing what's going on. Yeah, and she dies. And at the time that they finally got his blood drawn, which of course is quite a bit later, it was a 0.13. But it was certainly higher, and they can factor that back. So he definitely was served when he should not have been served alcohol. The woman's now dead. Yeah. I mean, so that's a current lawsuit. It happened in 2022, but the lawsuit was just filed. Criminally, he was sentenced to 1 to 15 years for automobile homicide and up to 5 years for domestic violence.
1 to 15? That's such a wide range there.
Yeah, so it's going to be up to the judge. And I would think that with the facts of this case, it's going to be on the high end. Yeah. And then additionally, the 5 years for up to 5 years for domestic violence, and they're to be served consecutively. So this guy's going to be going away for quite a while.
God, and then the kids just in the system,
can you imagine?
Right? Or I mean, I guess if any close family
hopefully
members.
Family members. Yeah. Well, her sister was... had participated in the sentencing hearing, and so she does have family. Hopefully the child will have a good home to grow up in, because definitely doesn't want to be around that nutcase. But so that was just a different type of a kind of dram shop case, or liability for overservice of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm a little bit surprised that I haven't seen more in the news about airlines, because of all the places where you see drunk people, it's airports and in airport lounges and on the plane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of drinking at the airport. Like, I think it's a good time. Airport sucks. Everyone hates being at the airport, but if you get a few drinks in you, if you're flying, isn't there something too where like the higher elevation is supposed to make you more intoxicated?
Yeah, I think there is something about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe it, but I've heard it. I think, but we probably don't see many cases like this, because oftentimes when people leave the airport, they're either going to their hotel or they're going home, and either way they usually just hang out wherever they go to. And if they aren't hanging out there, it's probably because, like, I don't know, they go out to dinner when you get to a new place. You get a new
well, you might have a cab. I mean,
yeah, you're always who parks at the airport these days? But
I mean, you might be going to get a rental car, or again, when you're coming home, you're going to get your vehicle in long-term, short-term parking. So but again, the person serving, they don't know. They by law, they can't serve somebody who's already intoxicated. And better safe than sorry. But I do think, and especially on these long flights and like the international flights, I mean, they even in coach, they're giving you free alcohol. They don't want to deal with you for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. They want you to sleep.
I want to sleep. I want to be. I mean, it kind of depends. I think one of the times I flew back from Vegas, I was like, wow, I'm really tired, but free drinks. So I was like powering to stay awake. Just so
this is a 45-minute flight we're talking about as well.
I was slamming.
Or actually even less because you're going from Phoenix, for God's sakes. It's probably like a 30-minute flight and you're slamming.
I got to get the bang for my buck, okay,
I guess.
That is a chaotic story, though. Absolutely insane. The fact that there was people, onlookers during that whole time, his reaction to it, I think, is even crazy. Like, oh, now I got to take you to the emergency office.
This is all your fault.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. Ruined our day here. Now I got to take you to the emergency room. And that's why I was so confused that she died, because I felt like those responses, she must have not been in terrible shape for him to be.
Well, he's throwing her in there. But then what they said was that when the paramedics arrived, she was non-responsive, but she was breathing. But I mean, that's going to be internal injuries. She probably had internal bleeding, and then but they get her to the hospital. And I mean, it sounds like pretty horrendous injuries.
God, that's awful.
Yeah. Well, when I was, on that one flight, I mean, and this guy, it was just the straight. I guess I hadn't really seen them get pulled off, but he was yelling and screaming, and what he was pissed off about was he was sitting in coach, but he was sitting right next to the first class. And it was like the meal was a box. I mean, it wasn't like one of those hot meals with warm nuts first and, the tablecloth.
It was a shitty.
It was like a box of crap, basically, that they handed you. But he wanted one. And she said she couldn't give him one. And he started yelling and screaming at the flight attendant and demanding. And like the whole, I mean, it was like the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah. Well, he's in coach, right?
Yeah.
And he wants the box that the first class is getting.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, bud, you're in coach.
Well, he was. I mean, the thing was, he was just wasted. But he had his wife and a child with him too. God. And I felt so bad for them. I was just like, oh my God, how embarrassing must this be? And then we land, and literally nobody could get off until they came in and they handcuffed him and took him out.
Was he yelling when he got handcuffed?
No, actually, he was pretty calm.
He probably realized how bad it was.
Well, maybe he was sobering up. I don't know.
Maybe.
So I don't know what ultimately happened to him. But and I think that the airlines have said that they're having a zero tolerance on this. People have getting belligerent and assaultive to the flight attendants, and you shouldn't have to put up with that. I mean, it's a pain. It's a miserable enough job as it is.
Do you think they're going to add any like limitations, like 2 drinks per passenger or something like that? Because they also make a lot of money. I mean, not all of these drinks are free. It's not.
No, usually they're not.
Yeah, usually they're not. And they are pricey up there. So, I mean, they're definitely making good money for overselling to some of these people.
Well, what they probably need to do is just make sure that they have good training. And I don't know what's required for flight attendants, if it's the same. Like when you have you can train your staff at a bar for alcohol service.
Yeah.
And some require that.
It's just hard. I mean, like alcohol service and like being able to tell, because it's so subjective. It's always, I mean, like, yes, there are some little signs here and there that's like, okay, this is clearly bad. They're stumbling, right? They fall off their chair. Like, okay, yes, obviously you stop. But there's also, most of the time, I would argue, is like this gray area, this limbo area of, okay, they're clearly pretty drunk, but they're not slurring their words. Maybe he stumbled a bit, but it was like the stairs and the lighting's dark, and he's spending a lot of money here and he has a driver. He has someone else that's not drinking at the table. Do we need to cut him off? It's just like all these very situational type of questions where it's hard to train for.
Yeah, well, it's tough. And I certainly wouldn't want to be a flight attendant, because it's like, if I give him one more, will he pass out and leave me alone? Or if I give him one more, will he like lose his shit and punch me?
And I have to stay here for an hour. You can't even kick him out like a restaurant. You kick him out. Airplane, it's like, oh wow, I'm just fucked for the next few hours.
Or then you see these situations where they like duct tape people and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like in Wolf of Wall Street, he gets strapped to the chair.
Yeah, but I think they do. Well, there was something happened recently where some guy tried to like open the door during flight, and between the flight attendants and other passengers, they tackled him and wrestled him down and duct taped him, so that he couldn't, I guess, cause any more trouble. So
impressive.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that is an absolutely insane story. Hopefully they don't add limits to drinks personally, but hopefully they do have some more oversight to prevent situations like this.
A healthy compromise. Is that it?
Exactly.
Okay.
We are kind of at the end here. Was there anything else you wanted to add on before we close out?
Oh, I don't think so. We'll be recording again in just a few days, and we'll be back with more interesting, juicy stories and important updates on cases.
Yes. We will keep you all updated, especially with the mesh trial coming up. We got 3 weeks of a lot of info, a lot of content, and maybe some shocking evidence coming out. We'll see. But thank you everyone for tuning in, hanging out with us on this wonderful day. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to throw them down in the comment section wherever you're watching this: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. We're always taking a look. We're always watching the comments, and maybe it's something that you don't necessarily want to put out in the public eye. Completely okay. We understand. We have the podcast at showeredlaw.com email, so you can send any of your stories, any of your questions over to us. We're more than happy to review them on the show. It would hopefully be useful for you, and maybe even be useful for other people tuning in and have similar questions. But with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. We'll see you same day, same time next week.
Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.